Let's talk today about one of the more interesting names on the Montreal Canadiens, and not because this guy is super amazing, lighting the world on fire, he is fantastic and everybody wants him, but because we have ourselves a growing sentiment from Montreal media talking about whether or not this guy is even going to be worth a contract in the future at all. Let's go over to the most polarizing third overall pick the Montreal Canadiens have had in their system the past decade and a half. And I'm saying that kind of facetiously because, hey, there are a whole bunch of third overall picks that have made themselves over to the Canadiens, and Pierre-Luc Dubois could be another one coming soon. Let's talk today about the one taken in the 2013 NHL Draft. Third overall by the Tampa Bay Lightning, Jonathan Drouin. The reason we're talking about Drouin is because ever since getting acquired by the Canadiens in the Mikhail Sergachev trade all those years ago, he has had somewhat of a target on his back when it comes to expectations and what this guy was supposed to be able to accomplish. Drouin today is 27 years old, 6 feet 203, a left-handed left-wing center player, signed till the end of this season making $5.5 million a year. He had been making this amount of money ever since 2017-2018. It's been a long time that Drouin has had this as his overall payroll, but once upon a time there was a period where this sort of money was seen as a more reasonable amount for the services that Drouin provided. Now, granted, this season, the past few years, it's really not been like that, unfortunately. But for Drouin, at his Montreal Canadiens peak, he was a 53-point caliber guy with 18 goals and 35 assists in 2018-19. Ever since then, though, you started to see a little bit of the... I don't know if decline is the right word to use here, but you saw Drouin ending up not really being utilized and being as successful as he had been in the past. This is because, if you take a look at 2019-20, the guy only played 27 games. The year after, 44 games. The bubble playoffs where the Canadiens went to the finals, he didn't play a single game. And then you have yourselves 34-game seasons, a 32-game season this year. Drouin is just coming back after missing a month's worth of action with the Canadiens. And overall, this has been a player who has been absent out of the lineup for so many different reasons that it's been kind of a weird sort of transition from what Drouin was for the Canadiens to what he has sort of been the past little while here. No, I'm not going to go out there and say that Drouin missing games and not being in the lineup is a really bad thing. There were moments where Drouin had to take some time away, step away from the game for his own mental security. There were times where he was injured, this and that. And while you can't go out there and necessarily blame a guy for deciding to put himself and his own mental well-being over playing a sport, which is definitely understandable, it gets to a point now where you take a look at Drouin and his overall reputation of being a third overall pick with 50-point caliber potential and who is worth 5.5 AAV, it's no longer really there. This season, the guy has 17 assists in 32 games played and 0 goals. But if you take a look at Drouin in his most recent few games, bearing yesterday's 6-2 loss against the Hurricanes, Drouin had 5 assists in his last 2 games combined against the Oilers and the Blackhawks. This has been some of the best hockey that Drouin has played the past little while here, and he usually comes out here and maybe gets a multi-point game every so often. It's usually a pretty big deal. He also had a 3-assist night against Nashville 1 month ago, which is pretty interesting. But because of Jonathan Drouin and the way his career has trended down, you have yourselves a whole bunch of Montreal media going out there and talking about this guy in a pretty weird way, if I do say so myself. We're going over onto one article on TVA Sports talking about Jonathan Drouin, how it's over for this analyst. Now, I know, translated to English, this looks like a really bad quote. It looks like Jonathan Drouin himself is saying that hockey is over for him, but no, the quote is being said by a person on the JIC show, which is kind of why this is being quoted the way it is. Either way, this is a video segment from JIC talking about what different analysts have to say about Drouin, And the article goes out there and sums up their thoughts in a pretty nice format. And so just to prove my point, we're going to go out there and read what some of these Montreal analysts say about Jonathan Drouin and the situation. Montreal Canadiens forward Drouin is enjoying recent success with 12 points in 12 games, which has many fans saying GM Kent Hughes should offer him a new contract for next season. Each of the few analysts on the show, though, are against this idea. Here's what they had to say about it during their time at JIC, which you can see in the video above. Tony Marinaro says this: Jonathan has been here for 6 years. Of course, he has not been lucky, but we also have seen that Montreal is perhaps a bit too much for him. There, he is doing well. I'm happy for him, but I think he needs a new start somewhere. Jean-Charles Lajoie goes out there and says, I agree that we wish him good luck, but elsewhere. A trade that puts him on a team that's going into the playoffs with which he's having success. He may have a 2 or 3 year contract waiting for him somewhere this summer. Michel Bergeron says this: It's over for me. I adored Jonathan before he arrived in Montreal. He spent 6 years and then, all of a sudden, in a short period of time, it worked. I think that for his own good and for the good of the organization, he must leave before March 3rd. He's a guy who deserves to have fun in the market where there's less pressure. Me, that's what I wish for him, Maxime Lapierre says. And then Guillaume Latendresse goes out there and says that even at $1.5 million a year, I don't sign Drouin. We turned the page on what happened. It's sad. He's had injuries. It wasn't perfect, but that's it. And this is sort of where the real dilemma comes in. Because at the end of the day, if you take a look at what Drouin is at his peak, we all know what he's capable of. We all know he can be a very good, offensive, creatively passing type of winger that plays well along the perimeter and finds guys with pretty impossible angles to set them up for good scoring chances. Last year, he had 20 points in 34 games played, which if you do the math over 82, I know this is really bad sample size right here, but 20 divided by 34, multiplied out by a full season, that's a 48-point pace. And for a guy making $5.5 million, that's not the worst type of contract in the world. It's just availability definitely has to be taken into account, and Drouin has not been the most available player the Montreal Canadiens have had on their roster the past little while, and it's very evident with how Montreal analysts are going out there and talking about this guy. The dilemma comes in because he is a talented player, he just has not shown off that talent as much as you probably would have wanted him to as a member of the Habs the past 6 years. I'm not going to go out there and say that if the Canadiens had Drouin, they would have won the Cup against Tampa, but still, that's a player that ended up missing out on the whole playoff run. He had his reasons, and I definitely understand that, but it kind of speaks to the availability that Drouin has had this entire time too. Here's another article on TVA Sports going over some quotes made by Jonathan Drouin from about, when was this, February 14th, so a few days ago? It talks about how Drouin has been open about his future. When asked by a reporter if he had it in mind to improve his lot as the trade deadline and contract expiration approached, number 27 got straight to the point. Obviously, I know what situation I'm in right now, Drouin said candidly. This is my last year of my contract. It's up to me to show that if a team wants me in the future or on March 3rd, I'm able to come and play and I'm able to play for another team. Marty St. Louis went out there and said this: there are a lot of guys playing really good hockey and continuing to push their value up. Drouin plays very good hockey. Overall, I'm happy with his play and his commitment this season. David Savard said that Drouin has a lot of talent. He creates many things for other players. He is patient with the puck, and it's fun to see him being rewarded. And of course, it is fun seeing Montreal Canadiens guys going out there and producing a boatload of points. Obviously, a point per game sample in the past few games worth of play is really good for Jonathan Drouin, but there is still a part that asks the question as to where he goes in the future, because if it's not with Montreal, hopefully it is with some other team that allows him to maybe play his game a lot more, be more comfortable, consistently speaking, I guess you could say, and hopefully allow him to prosper into the player that we know he is capable of being. 27 years old, there's not really too much time left for him to grow, quote-unquote, in the National Hockey League. And so, if there is a time for him to post up 50 points in a season once again, maybe get a 60, 65-point year where he's got 50 assists in the process, it's coming up soon. Hopefully, at least. And so you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Jonathan Drouin and the entire dilemma that is surrounding him at the moment. The future with Montreal, whether or not it's a trade, if it's a contract even, period, at the end of the day, because there have been some analysts going out there saying they don't know if Drouin has been good enough or consistent enough to even get an NHL contract next season, which to me kind of feels a little bit far-fetched, but at the end of the day, It's whatever. The comment section is your floor. Let me know your opinions about Jonathan Drouin and the Canadiens in this situation as a whole. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.